Do you think that Football Manager is fundamentally a funny game?
Define funny. Well, it can be. It can be. I'm very much like let's entertain first, and let's entertain, and then the game is almost secondary. So because the game's secondary, I'm not paying as much attention as someone who's sat there just playing the game only. I just think, you know what, that's just easier for me. Like, let's just be the guy that isn't that good on the game. People love watching someone fail, and they love being like, hey, he's about to get sacked, yeah. And I'm like, oh, this is great for views. Let's just keep doing this. Because you can't be angry at only 2 people turning up as well. That's the other thing that I learned from comedy, to appreciate whoever turns up. Like, if someone's paid to see your show, you give them the best you can. Creators didn't want to take part in it because they realised, basically, once they realised the meta in terms of tactics and players, there was no element of competitiveness in there at all.
To FM Thoughts, a podcast about thoughts on Football Manager. I am JMThoughts, and with me today is Tony Jameson. Hello.
Hello, JM. How are we? Are you well?
Yeah, all right. We were just reminiscing about both having a bit of a cold over the last few weeks, but other than that, I think we're doing all right, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we're getting there. I think tonight's show is going to be mainly focusing on flu and or cold. So yeah, that's a special topic. Thoughts for today.
Playing Football Manager with a cold. That's it. We're going to get 45 minutes out of that.
basically, just living life as orange injured. That's where we are at this moment in time.
Perfect. I think most people will know who you are, but if people don't, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm more than happy to. For the 3 people that do know who I am, don't tell anybody. But for those people that don't know, so my name's Tony. I'm a comedian turned content creator. I was a stand-up comedian for 15 years. That sounds a lot of numbers to say out loud now, doesn't it? 15 years or so.
Surely at your age you can't have been doing that for 15 years.
May, seriously, man, you're very, very kind. You're very kind. But yeah, 15 years stand-up comedian, toured around the UK, doing most of the clubs. Did a gig at the FIFA Museum in Switzerland before. That was pretty cool. Did a did a stand-up show about Football Manager, which I guess is kind of the reason that we're here talking about this. And then the old pandemic hit, and stand-up never became a thing for me. And so I had to pivot, as the football people talk about nowadays, pivoting. And I pivoted from comedian to content creator. So that's where I am now.
I'm always curious. So for how long had you been doing stand-up before you did the Football Manager stand-up tour?
So I think I've been doing stand-up for about maybe like sort of 4 or 5 years at that point. And then the Football Manager show so the show itself was called Football Manager Ruined My Life. You can sort of see there's a poster of it just there behind my head, because I'm not an egomaniac, but it's like it's a nice thing I'm proud of. So so basically it's about 4 or 5 years in, and it was my first ever Edinburgh Fringe show, and it was my debut hour. So what you're meant to do on an Edinburgh Fringe debut is basically put all your best stuff in and try and get people to sort of see you. And I said to my now wife, and said, look, what I'm going to do is I've got this 5-minute bit about managing Blythe Spartans in Football Manager. I think I should write a show about Football Manager. And she said, you're an idiot. No one's going to come. Don't do that. It's a stupid idea. And I was like, yeah, I fully understand that. I fully appreciate that. However, I've already told the venue I'm doing it, so it looks like I'm doing it. So basically, I reverse engineered a show. So I started doing it in Leicester. So the first ever sort of preview was at Leicester Comedy Festival, and it was very much 20 minutes of Football Manager stuff, and then like 40 minutes of stand up. And then as we got closer to Edinburgh, the amount of stand up was being pulled out, the more Football Manager stuff was getting put in. And even when it got to Edinburgh, I still think it wasn't quite Football Manager throughout, but it was very much a Football Manager show. And there was some really sort of like interesting, quirky bits in there, which you clearly couldn't do in any comedy club. Also, previewing it was really difficult because like venues weren't overly keen on like you sort of rocking up and doing stuff, because they had their regular audience who were there for just stand up. And I'm talking about Taribo West, and they're going like, who? Why? Like, why are you talking about this? Like, just, so I had to sort of like build the show a little bit without it being in front of audiences. And then when it came to the Fringe, we we're really, really fortunate that the whole run sold out, which is like bizarre for a debut run. And we sold this lovely little 40-seater out every single night, which is awesome. And then I just sort of like thought I'll book another couple of shows in other little festivals and stuff. And eventually, like, a tour manager came to see me in Sheffield, I remember it was, and there was like Arsenal versus Dortmund, I think it was, Champions League, was downstairs, and it was like lashing it down with rain outside in this pub in Sheffield, and Sheffield or Hull, I think it was Sheffield possibly, and like he came to see the show, but we'd had it rammed out up top, and I was like, oh, what do you think? He went, look, he said, like, whatever I think of the show, he says, it's throwing it down outside. You have 100 people upstairs. That's a show. Like, do you know what I mean? Like you're doing something right. It helps that I get the show and I understand it. So we then sort of like started talking, and he said, look, let's see about taking on the road. And yeah, it snowballed from there. And then we ended up touring it for 18 months, just about. Like, took the show from an hour, we took it to like an hour 45. We had breaks and stuff, and then went back to the Fringe, like at the end of the tour, to go and sort of do like what we called the data update. And it was like a sort of second attempt at the show, which was interesting because I thought that people had seen the show before, but then I turned up and there was people who hadn't seen the show before, and I was like, oh, right, so a lot of context you're going to miss out on here. But again, that was great. And it was in a bigger room at the Stand Comedy Club again, who were like awesome to me throughout my whole comedy club career. And they say they took the risk and they took the opportunity on it. So yeah, very, very thankful for them to do that.
Amazing. And at what point in that cycle did you come to Lancaster Arts when I was a marketing assistant?
That was fairly early on. So that was fairly early on. There was yourself there, and there was Johnny Sharples was there as well, right, who's, again, if people are sort of into the FM space will know Johnny Sharples was the creator of Ivica Strock, who was the Croatian new gen that he basically, his brother committed suicide, and he was sort of like this useful sort of like escapism, I think. It's probably the best way of describing it. And like Ivica became this like incredible Twitter character, and like Johnny made like a program for Ivica Strock's testimonial, which I've got a copy of, and he sent me an autographed photograph of this new gen from like Croatia, and I was like, this is brilliant. So yeah, Johnny was there as well, and Johnny and I have started we sort of know each other reasonably well, from like the sort of back from the Football Manager documentary, and then those sorts of moments as well. So yeah, Lancaster was pretty early on. I remember that being quite fun though. That was a good one, Lancaster.
Yeah,
there was a few which was great, and there was a few which were a bit like, I don't think you understand this.
Yeah, I would say it was interesting because I was having to promote that, and most of the stuff that we did was bizarre. And this was part of like 3 or 4 things that we were programming in to be a bit more normal, still very niche. And so I think we kind of got some people in, but there were definitely a good chunk of people that sort of understood football and were like, this looks interesting. So I think they got the Aston Villa bit, but maybe the Football Manager stuff was kind of a little bit, they were kind of rolling along with it.
Well, this is the thing. So we had some people were like that. Like they would, so we had sort of like 2 audiences really that came to the show. So we had Football Manager fans who wanted entirely Football Manager stuff. And again, we might talk about this a little bit later on. And if you didn't give them 90 minutes of Football Manager stuff, then they were sort of a bit like, no, we've been gypped a little bit here. And then you had some people turned up who like understood football and were just happy for football chat and banter and stuff. And they were like, they kind of got Football Manager. They knew what it was and they were fine with the references. We did the University of Football business at Burnley. So Turf Moor was the original home of the University of Football business campus. They've now got one at Wembley, and they've got one, so it's moved into the Etihad at Manchester City, and then Wembley as well. But when it first started, it was at Burnley, and we did that as well. So the students were all people who are going to end up working in football. Like they're wannabe agents, they're like sort of data analysts, wannabe data analyst scouts, and I'm going on like sort of this should be the easiest gig ever, but it wasn't, because they took it all really seriously, and like half of them got it and they were like, yeah, this is mint. And half of them were just like, I think he's taking the mick out of us here a little bit. And I'm like, well, yeah, obviously, but still. But yeah, that was really fun. That was a really fun show, actually.
That sounds good. Did you have any shows that were particularly surreal. I imagine the Switzerland one must have been a bit weird.
Switzerland was properly bizarre. That was really bizarre because that was the FIFA museum in Zurich, and the guy who booked it, he runs a regular gig in Zurich anyway, and I knew, so a mate of mine got in touch and said, all right, this guy wants to get you out, and Jim Campbell from the Football Ramble, and my mate Eddie Brimson, who's a former football hooligan turned comedian and author. So he's wrote loads and loads of books on football, and Subbuteo and stuff is also his extra thing. So he wanted to put this football show on, and it's predominantly English speaking, and then there's like a large expat community that they play to as well. So when we turned up, and I was thinking, this is going to be bizarre. Like, again, I don't know what I'm expecting, but we turned up, and the show was pretty fun. Because I guess the thing with the Football Manager stuff is as long as you've got someone in there who knows the game, you can just play to them really. And then the whole point of the show is not to make the audience feel like they're the idiot. The whole point of the show is to make people go, oh God, at least I'm not like that guy. Like, I might take this game a bit too seriously, but he takes it far too seriously. And that's how I always wanted the show to play. And whenever you get audiences who were happy to be the role that I was, that's when like any possible sort of like quiet show or difficult show became a bit more interesting. Like, so the Switzerland one was really interesting. We had some lads in from Bolton who we sort of like had a bit of back and forth about sort of their save and stuff. And we were able to sort of come away from the show and sort of angle and sort of go forth that way. And then Nottingham, I remember, was a show about, I was just chatting to the front row and I was like asking, usual comedian stuff like, what do you do for a living sort of thing. And this lad stands up and he goes, I'm the Ajax manager. And I was like, what? I was like, fine, like he's in the zone. That gets a bit of a laugh. And his mate goes, I'm his assistant. And I was like, right, fine, we've got the show. Like, this is how it's going to be tonight. And that was brilliant. And then Leicester, like going back right to the start, the first show in Leicester, no, it was the second time I went to Leicester. Was it second? I'm the second. No, I think it was the first, actually. I got talking to some guys after the show, and there was 5 of them, and they all played as Belgium clubs, and this ended up becoming part of the show, because I was like, this story's great, I love it. So they ended up sort of playing as Belgian clubs, 2nd division, 3rd division Belgium clubs, and as a lad's holiday, they all went to Belgium to go and visit these 2nd and 3rd division clubs, to buy shirts of the clubs that they managed, and then to chant for the new gens that clearly didn't exist. And I was like, this is brilliant. This is really, really good. So I put that in the show. And then it turns out a few weeks ago, Mrs. J was at work, and she was talking to one of her colleagues, and she goes like, talking to the colleague, and the colleague goes, hang on, just double checking, like, your fella, right? Like, he's a comedian, isn't he? And she was like, yeah. And he was like, did he ever do a show in Leicester about Football Manager? She's like, yeah. And she's like, right, because we were the lads that did this thing about Belgian football clubs. And she was like, that's in the show. That's in the show.
Wow.
So I was like, what a small world that it ends up that Mr. J's worked with one of the lads that whose story became part of my show. So I thought that's cool.
It is a small world, I think, though, with the amount of loops and connections that you end up with. It's very interesting. It's curious that you said there that part of the show, having seen it, I totally get that kind of the pitch was sort of like, this guy's taking it too far, he's obsessed, let's all laugh at him, is an element of it. Like, it's got a much more nuance to that. But I find that interesting because that's quite contrasting to the persona you have on Twitch now, where I would say you don't take the game super, super seriously. We've got a lot of Twitch streamers who like take their success in the game very seriously. They have a very kind of tactical approach, and you've kind of flipped a little bit, and I suppose you're taking the narrative seriously, but I would say you're more one of the more relaxed in that space. Was that a hard transition? Was that an intentional thing?
No, I think that was fairly easy, to be honest. I think it's quite a deliberate decision as well. So getting into Twitch was obviously pandemic driven. Comedy wasn't really a thing. Started podcasting with a mate of mine, Matt Richards. Started a podcast. He was a presenter, so he was out of work as well. Both of our industries closed down overnight. He and I had a group of mutual friends that we always kept running into each other. He came to the show at the Lowry when we did it in Manchester. We talked quite a bit about Football Manager, and he said, look, should we do a podcast about this? Because he was using the game as sort of helping him through the pandemic, and in the same way a lot of people were, to be honest. So hence why we made the podcast Football Manager Therapy, and it was literally the idea of us using it as therapy at the time. And Twitch was something I wasn't familiar with at the start of the pandemic, and then I got into it a little bit more. Saw some comedians start to use it to their advantage, like people like Roscoe McClelland, really, really good at it. Ian Sterling was great at it. Rob Mulholland was fantastic at it. And I was like, okay, I didn't actually have the setup for it. So I didn't have a desktop PC. I only had a MacBook Pro laptop. I've got cameras all over the place because I'm forming film production. But it was beyond my understanding and capabilities how to do it. So I started having a bit of a look at it, and me and Mrs. J talked about it and thought, right, look, fine, let's see if we go with it. And the first time I was on stream, I was like, I don't know how this is going to work, right? Because there was part of me thinking I'd built myself up in this Football Manager ruined my life thing that, well, I'm quite successful at the game. Like I've won the Champions League with Black Spartans, so people are going to expect something. But I think I'd managed to create the persona in the podcast of I was the idiot again. I was happy to be the comedic relief in the podcast. So let's work on me getting sacked. Let's work on me not doing so well. And that was therefore a really easy thing to do when we got on stream, because I'm very much like, let's entertain first, and let's entertain. And then the game is almost secondary. So because the game's secondary, I'm not paying as much attention as someone who's sat there just playing the game only. So therefore, the chance of me failing increases exponentially because I'm not paying as much attention to it. And because of the fact that I know that's coming and I'm able to play up to it, I just think, you know what, that's just easier for me. Let's just be the guy that isn't that good on the game. And I'm happy to do it. And people love watching someone fail, and they love being like, hey, he's about to get sacked, yeah. And I'm like, oh, this is great for views. Let's just keep doing this. You put your stream title, sack incoming, and you just sit with your starting screen and just wait and watch the numbers go up and up and up. And I'm like, well, this is absolutely fine. Let's do this, shall we? Rather than, oh, we're doing really well. No one wants to see we're doing really well. They either want to see you be incredible or be really bad. And it's so much easier being bad. So much easier.
Was it a natural transition for you? Do you think it was like a really clear, well, I'm used to talking in front of an audience, so now I just talk in front of a virtual audience? Or was that difficult to wrap your head around?
I think that massively gave me an advantage, to be honest. And again, I've spoken to a few people who've since come asking for advice about, I want to start streaming, I want to start content, I want to start podcasting. What advice have you got? Because you made it look really, really simple. And I was like, okay, so I was fortunate in a sense. I was fortunate that because of the fact that I'd done the stand-up show, that I was kind of known to a degree in the Football Manager space, so that if I posted about doing a Football Manager podcast, or posted about Football Manager video or Football Manager Twitch, a few people would be like, oh, that's the Football Manager guy, the comedian guy. We sort of know who he is. And that was so I was super fortunate that when I first started streaming, I didn't have the experience of streaming to nobody or streaming to one or streaming to two. So I was able to stream to maybe 10 or 15 or something. And those are still there's people who maybe go for years, still love the idea of 10 and 15 because that's a good number. So I always say that my transition into Twitch was not as straightforward as probably some people who've got a starting point of 0, so I can't appreciate the struggle so much from a 0 viewership onwards. And again, the whole thing of I'd done God knows how many years stand up until this point. I've been a college lecturer. I'm used to talking in front of people, so I didn't have that hurdle to get over either. Mm-hmm. What I did have, and this was the first few streams, was I struggled with pacing. Because as a comedian, I'm used to an instant reaction. Yeah. And when I'm sort of I'm okay, all I can do is just talk and I've just got to keep talking. And I felt as though as long as I kept talking, I would invite conversation or invite comment, or I just had to keep being on, so that if
Mhm.
someone was flicking through and they saw me and I was talking, they would be like, oh, I wonder what this guy's saying, and they'd jump in, rather than, and this is the bit of advice I give to any newer streamer or even streamers who've been going for a while, is you can't just sit in silence for like ages. You've got to look like you're enjoying it, right? Because if you're sat there just scrolling away, not doing anything, you've got a couple of viewers in, and you're just like, oh, you like, you don't know who's scrolling past. So you're in the shop window essentially. So I'm very much that school of thought. Maybe that's from comedy, maybe that's from podcasting or whatever, lecturing. So you've got to make sure that that people are going to buy into that first impression. And yeah, I think the fact that I could talk in front of people certainly made it easier. Certainly made it easier.
That is the interesting thing of like, you do get that engagement from the chat, and I think that's very similar to, I've given talks and stuff before. It's kind of similar when it's flowing, but we have those moments where maybe it's not flowing, particularly kind of maybe earlier on or on a quiet night. You just have to remind yourself that actually, I've found out there's people who seem to come to every single one of my streams and never say anything. And they're obviously getting something out of it, but I don't know they're there. So you kind of don't want to switch off. Or there's loads of people who come in and say hi, and I'm like, I don't know if they're still here. And then they'll put a message in an hour later, and they're like, oh yeah, I was just, doing something else, but I've enjoyed all this stuff that's happened.
I was gonna say,
it's interesting, sort of not being able to see the reaction. Not if someone in the audience isn't laughing out loud and applauding, but you can see they're watching you, whereas you just you don't see that. You see that number of, in your case, whatever it is, 50 people, 100 people, but you don't know most of those people. You've got no indication that they're enjoying it.
100%, and that's the thing as well, because so you've got two schools of thought with that one, and again, like, you either have your numbers on or you have your numbers off, and ultimately it makes no difference, like, because it can say one person, it can say 3,000 people. Ultimately, it's me in front of a screen. It could be anybody. Like there's not 3,000 people sat behind my monitors right now.
Yeah.
So if it was, you'd get a very, very different Tony in front of those 3,000 people. Like, but when it's online, you have to perform, and it is a performance as well. And I think there's maybe some people don't really tally that bit in. You have to perform like there's 3,000 people there or 100 people there or something, because to all intents and purposes, there might be, like, the numbers might be wrong, like Twitch maybe hasn't caught up or whatever. Like, you get a big raid, like, you can't suddenly switch from incredibly, like, sort of quiet and reserved and, oh, there's only one or two people in, to 100 people be like, oh, hey, it's great to have you in. Like, it's just, because then it looks really disingenuous for the people who've been sat watching you win. It's like, oh, they didn't really care, there's only two of us here, but now there's 100 people, I was going to play up to it. Like, that's a really, really difficult thing to do as well, and to strike that balance of sincerity and authenticity. And that's maybe the one thing that I think I hold that quite high in my performance of my presentation, because I've done stand-up to 1,000 people and I've done stand-up to 2 people for an hour. So I understand just how hard that is to do stand-up to just 2 people for an hour-long show. Like, because it's easier to make 1,000 people laugh, because if you get 50 people, 50% of those people laughing, that's 500, easy. You get 50% of 2 people laughing, that's 1, and it's awkward. Like, so if you can really adapt your style to make those 2 people feel welcome and warm and involved and part of the show and the experience, and they leave and go, hey, fair play for him, he dug in for that, like, then, because you can't be angry at only 2 people turning up as well. That's the other thing that I learned from comedy, to appreciate whoever turns up. Like, if someone's paid to see your show, you give them the best you can. You can't be angry that you're in a room that seats 100 and 2 people are there. You're like, hey, you know what? 2 people have turned up. This is going to be class. Like, you genuinely get a show that no one else is going to get right now. And there are some people that will go a bit like, it's a bit rubbish. Can we not just pull it? Like, I don't really want to perform to 2 people. But you know what? There's a high chance those 2 people are going to stick with you for a long time, because they're going to remember that experience. Rather than the 100, you run the risk of being forgotten about.
I think it was on one of the content clinics that they did, Dr. Benjamin Lelujo's. I can't remember exactly.
They were great.
Who was saying this, but they were talking about what's the aim. If you're creating Football Manager content, what's your aim? And they were saying, I think it was Kev was saying, if it's to just share what you're doing as if you're telling your mates, you should be just delighted if you get a few people. And he wasn't meaning it in a kind of patronizing way, but like if you think about it, like actually, if you were asking some of your friends to sit down for an hour and you to tell them about your Football Manager story, that'd be really impressive. And like you shouldn't take that for granted, which kind of reminds me a little bit of what you were saying there, that if somebody's come to your stream or they've come to your comedy show and they've given an hour of their time or 2 hours or whatever, like you shouldn't be sitting there going, oh, I wish it was 100 people. You should be going, oh, that's really actually, thank you. You've given me this time and I'm going to give you my best. Yeah, it could only be seen as a positive thing, I think. You have used some of your comedy connections to create some in-person events in the past. So you've done podcasts that have been live and they've been it's been about the podcast, but I would almost say it's almost been as much about the gathering of people. Yeah. I also had an interesting conversation in season 1 of this podcast with Chuck, Big Man of Campus. And I'm plugging it because I think it's still really good to go back and listen. It was about whether Football Manager could ever be an e-sport.
Yeah.
And I'm bringing that in because I think it's relevant to the conversation of, these days don't have that many in-person Football Manager gatherings. There isn't sort of conferences or esports events. Callum seems to sort of be doing this charity match.
Callum did the Slough
every so often.
Charity match. Yeah.
You've maybe done this podcast. Neither of them are official. There was the Football Manager World Cup, but that wasn't really something people could go to. Do you think, do you miss that in-person stuff from when you were doing comedy? Do you think there's a gap there? Do you think the Football Manager community should do more? What's your opinion on all of that?
Yes, and yes. So, yeah, basically, 100%, you hit the nail on the head with all those questions, really. So the podcast live shows that we did, so we'll try and sort of do it in a bit of order. So the podcast live show, we started out as Football Manager Therapy. Again, that's myself and Matt as presenters. We wanted to be back on stage, and we always said, if we could do a podcast live show, we'd be happy. Yeah, and that's what we wanted to do. And that was built as, let's do the show, but let's angle it as a Football Manager meetup. So because of the fact that we'd been through the pandemic and we'd been through lockdowns and people obviously were struggling a bit, and we were starting to build a small community, and it was a small community really, but we got some really sort of like good creators involved, and like some people that were, at the time sorry, the word just is the wrong word here, but like they were just viewers. They like just gave their time. Like people like my mods, for example, like on my stream, I'd never met my mods like until the live show. They were just like, I had no idea who these people were, but they just said, look, we really enjoy hanging out. Do you want some help? Like we can do shout outs for you. We can like ban people or like time people out or whatever. We can just look after the stream, let you do your thing. And I was like, how generous. Like that's really, really lovely. So it was great to meet them in person. It was great to meet people who I'd never met before. The mad scientist flying over from Denmark with his crazy mate, like, was incredible. Mrs. J helping book him a flight, going, I can get you a flight from Denmark for 20 quid. Like, you're coming. Things like that. Dave Goodger seen me do comedy, like, beforehand. He's seen me do a podcast when I had a comedy podcast. He came to see that. Then he came to see the Football Manager Therapy one. So there was that, like, sort of longevity of relationship as well. Meeting people, like yourself, sort of, going like, okay, we didn't fully know each other. We'd obviously had that sort of like little brief meeting over in Lancaster and trying to get then this community starting, and then meeting people like FM Llama, who I think is like well and truly ingratiated within the community, and then meeting him. And I remember speaking to Callum at that show as well, and telling him at the time in no uncertain terms, after about 3 cans of hooch, I was like, look, if you stick at what you're doing, like you're the next Dr. Benji. Like you absolutely are. You have everything in your arsenal to be the next big thing. Like just stick with it. Meeting people like Rich, who then of course ended up becoming part of FMT, and then subsequently once I left to go and work with The Athletic and then go independent. So the community was what I wanted to build, and it's very, very important to me with the podcast, with streaming. That's what I'm here for. I feel like Kev, the United City FM, he always talks about like, what is your purpose? What is the reason you're doing this for? Right? And the same as Lelouch was sitting there, what are you doing this for? And I feel like I've got an opportunity to bring people together, to get people into a room, to share their stories. That's what the stand-up show is about, was sharing stories. And That's the bit I loved. So for me, the live podcasts were a case of let's all meet up and have a drink and meet each other and have a coffee and make it really inclusive. We want to build that again. We've done more live shows since. The FM show have done some. We took a year off this year because of where Football Manager was with regards to FM 25 not existing and FM 26. We didn't know what was happening, so we decided let's not book the show just in case. But there is a plan. There is a plan I've been hankering with for a little while, and I think you've maybe seen the plan or heard about the plan. You're saying there about no conference, no convention. I mean, I very much want to do that. I 100% want a Football Manager convention. I want to be the guy that runs it. I want to be the guy that puts it together. I've got multiple plans on the go with what it's going to look like, how it's going to be, where it's going to be, when it's going to be. At the minute, it's a 2-day event. There's multiple stages. There's vendors. There's, a lot of stuff going on. How we're paying for it, I've got no idea. I'll work that out later. But I just think that there needs to be something. You're right, and I've spoken to Sports Interactive about it as well. I've put on their radar. It's maybe not something that they can help with directly, but might be able to sort of like at least help promote or retweet. I mean, they were good enough to do that for the stand-up show in the first instance.
Yeah.
But I've ran it past some big name creators in the space, and they're all like, do you know what? Yeah, if you can pull this off, this will be class. So I want to do something. And I want it to be big, and I want it to be good. Actually, no, big's probably the wrong word. I want it to be a good size first of all, and then it can grow. Like, I don't want to go. It needs to be like 10,000. It just has to be enough of a size for a couple of days that we can all hang out. We can share our Football Manager stories, meet people, meet and greets with the big creators. They can, go meet Kev, go meet Ben, go meet Jack, go and have a chat with them. Like, that'd be great. Have some sort of like some talks with, people who do great stuff. Like Aaron can do a tactics thing, and Musterman can do a data thing, and I just think it'd be fun. It's gonna be really, really fun. So I want to do it, and it's something I'm working on in the background. So if it comes off, it'll be class. It'll be really, really class. I don't. All I can say at this moment in time is I don't know. I want something next year, but it might depend a lot on finance or sponsorships as to whether it can come off. With regards to stuff about esports, well, with what Chuck's saying, the FIFA World Cup was from the outside, and then having gone to the final, it seemed like it was a success. It seemed like there was a lot of stuff to learn from it. Again, I've spoken about, can Football Manager be an esport? Maybe because of the fact that it's random number generation. I don't know. Maybe FM does some weird and wonderful things. You'd be a bit annoyed if there was $100,000 or $500,000 or something, on the line, and your goalkeeper does something silly, or your fullback decides to turn around the halfway line and launch the ball back and it's an own goal. You'd probably be a bit upset about that. And then, of course, there's a few concerns about where it would probably end up being hosted, which, Sports Interactive have also said, they wouldn't be necessarily keen on that either. So there are conversations to be had about that. I think, we've done bits of PvP ourselves with things like the playoffs. Road to Legends, of course, was a thing. The Streamer Showdown was massive. It's a popular scene. It's a popular way to play. And I think when it comes back into Football Manager, whenever that will be, if it's done well, I think people will attack it again because the interest is clearly there. And it's something that people have missed. And it'll just be fun again. And I think that's what Football Manager needs to be. It needs to be fun again.
I was going to say a bit of positivity, bit of a nice get together.
Sorry, shall I stop? Shall I change track? Because I feel as though positivity is missing at the minute.
No. I think if we can, I think it's a bit of a storm at the moment, but I think it will pass. I was going to say, we've spoken about comedy in the context of streaming, but you were one of the people that was kind of also turning it more into a show, with the playoffs, and obviously there was a number of these key sort of very kind of
spin-off shows as well, with like the
bombastic
and
kind of
and
fun
Mm.
Every single one of them died. What
Yeah.
suddenly back into the negative. But like, what do you think
Yeah.
happened there? Was that, I thought that was really interesting that there was this sort of huge upsurge and then a sort of almost organic collapse as well at the same sort of.
I think two things killed it. I think the first thing was creators didn't want to take part in it because they realized, basically, because once they realized the meta in terms of tactics and players, there was no element of competitiveness in there at all. So there became no point. You had tacticians who were being turned over by people who they'd never heard of, so were probably a bit miffed at that, and they were like, I'm the tactic expert, like I shouldn't be losing to this person or whatever. I think people took it far too seriously. There
There were some hurt feelings in them at one.
Yeah, and when we ran the playoffs, we ended up like every season we ran it, we almost had another. There was almost like as part of the process of invitation and the onboarding into the tournament was like, this is just a laugh. There is no prize.
Yeah.
Pack it in, the lot of yous. Like, you don't need to be taking it so seriously. Like, there is no route to the real World Cup. There's not an actual manager's job, like, at the end of this. And didn't matter how much you said it. As soon as everyone says go, it's like, it just, people would like come out of Discord calls and they'd like focus 100% on themselves, and which I guess is the nature of gaming and competitiveness. And as someone who's not very competitive, like it's really alien to me that, like, I understand why people do it, but I just also go, I mean, come on, like, can we not just all have a laugh here?
Yeah, it's interesting. We, myself, Pokes FM, Game Legend, and Michelino do a little sort of jokey tournament we call the Jaffa, which is just for our community, and we've had to keep it just for our community because we'd have people wanting to come in and win it and beat everyone, and we're like, no, this is just for regular people who want to have a bit of a laugh, and we can joke about this and that. And I did a couple of, maybe I do like Road to Legends or something. I did a couple of the tournaments, but I wasn't very good. So and I sort of almost didn't have that good a time because it was just going in and getting completely battered. And I don't know if similar to you, like I play Football Manager for the story, and I felt like some of these tournaments maybe that had been lost because once people discovered the meta and they discovered the tactics, then it almost felt more like Formula One, where you're in an arms race with the rules, and
100%,
everybody's playing
100%.
Gegenpress in a certain way, and it's every time you do it, you're having to tweak it to compensate, and it's whoever can find the exploit. It didn't feel like a bunch of people just having a good time.
Which again became how the showdown would play it and the playoffs would play it. They were trying to weave these narratives within the tournament,
which I think they did good.
So that
good
the
actually.
viewers, but so it was more so that the viewers could enjoy it, because what was interesting as well, and again, this is like, you probably don't really realize it until you're sort of like you stand back from it. You've got people who are watching the main feed who are getting the overview of everything. So that's the entertainment arm. So that's like your sort of your Red Zone, your Soccer Saturday sort of thing. And then you've got people who are in the individual streamers' streams, so they're not seeing anything else. So it's like they've got no idea what else is going on. So we were like, well, we have to make this entertaining. We have to kind of have some stories going along with it as well. And so I think there was that little bit of competitiveness that had come in from the players, and then I also think there was a little bit of fatigue with the player pool. Like, so everyone was obviously trying to. You need to do it for the audience. That's the thing. You need to create something for the audience. So, in order to maximize numbers, and this is where it sort of rubs me up a little bit the wrong way, because I'm like, I don't necessarily do stuff for viewer numbers per se. Like, if you're trying to put on a product you want to get the most people to watch, you have to pick the top 5 leagues, because they're players that are recognized by the most people. Someone who just drops into the stream for the first time, they're going to know who these players are.
Yeah.
You can't really have it where someone brand new turns up and you're doing the Kenyan third division, the the Caribbean Premier League.
We did
You've
in the
got the
Jeffer, but that was because again we
yeah.
just
You're
were
like you
like
got
we don't care about.
you've got sort of like the Armenian fourth division. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
hey, it would be great find
be
those
fun.
players and go, right, who actually is good at the game. But from a entertainment perspective, again, going back to what you said before about you either play the game to educate or entertain, and something like those PvP tournaments, they have to be to entertain.
Yeah.
So you have to have familiarity in there. You have to have players that people recognize. You have to make it easier for competitors as well. You don't, like, they're giving up their time to take part in a draft and then take part in a competition. And then we would that was like 2 days of people's lives, like 2 whole nights of their evening taken up with this. We made some people qualify, so we then wanted them for another night as well.
Yeah.
You can't then ask them to spend another night, like giving up almost a week to spend time in the database, finding all these players. But the interesting thing being, those people just did that anyway, or they had teams of people doing it. And I think once people started having teams working in the background, I was like, this isn't fun anymore.
When you're in that situation like you are with the playoffs, and you're kind of in that sort of producer almost role to some extent, you are trying to build for that broad audience. You get sort of groups of people coming in and saying, well, my creator isn't in, why is my person in? But if you're trying to build those longer term narratives, it's not just about, oh, well, we're always going to put this person in because they've got loads of followers. It's also like, well, you're not going to have the continuity of stories if it's a different 8 people every time. That's not like, there's kind of, it's not just being, oh, it's all, the amount of effort that a lot of these tournaments put into finding new ways to bring new people in. There'll always be a debut every time, It was kind of never good enough.
No,
which probably takes it out on the organisers as well. Oh, sick of being criticised every time we do this.
But again, that was something that we sort of like really embraced, that because the showdown had the possibility and had the opportunity to put the biggest creators on the spotlight, and that absolutely had to be done. And then you'd get like sort of other creators or smaller creators going like, well, why are they not giving a chance to someone else? And it's like, well, look, there are other tournaments that are happening. Like the playoffs was like, this was the next step down. We were like sort of, and then there was things like the Super League, and there was like Road to Legends and stuff. There was a pathway. It
was a whole ecosystem
to get in. Fantastic. Yeah. And we were very conscious, like we wanted to make sure we had representation in. We wanted to make sure that we were doing something slightly different to the showdown. We wanted it to be more about, you could progress to the playoffs. We had the path to the playoffs, so you could have genuine unknowns coming in to the playoffs. Like, so someone who's got like streaming for 5 weeks or whatever. Like there used to be, and again, I don't know how much people knew about this, but myself and Jebaru and Mozza, Simagio, we would sit in streams, like anyone we've never seen before. We'd sit and have a quick little nosy about, and we'd send a message going, good camera, good microphone, fairly entertaining, let's have a look, what do you reckon, you go and have a watch. And we were scouting constantly for people because we couldn't just rely on the same people being there all the time. We knew we couldn't, like we had one shot at getting Kev, we had one shot at getting Ben, we had one shot at getting Jack, so we had to build 4 other people as well. So we had our layer of top talent. Then we wanted to bring in some newer people that no one knew to make stars of them. And so we had like a proper scouting mission going on to find talent that nobody else, not that no one else knew about, but like we wanted to sort of bring in fresh faces. So again, really highlighting that community aspect of what we do. And talking about yourself there about like your own community drafts. I remember I did one of mine when we first started, TJ versus the community. And we had someone come in and they beat me and they were giving it the big and like, oh, I've just beaten you, TJ. And I'm like, I'm not that fussed, you know what I mean? Like, whatever. Okay, fine. Great. You've had your fun sort of thing. The joke was on them because that draft tournament itself was won by the AI, because the AI ended up winning that tournament. And I don't fully understand how to this day that none of us in that tournament won. The computer won. So I just thought that was a beautiful way of rounding off.
I think it was FM24 had this incredible glitch sometimes when you were doing a draft tournament where it, because it has the force continue. We had 2 community drafts where the force continue locked in and it went to like 5 seconds, and so you had 5 seconds to do everything, and then it would randomly kick you out. And we just rolled with it, and it was hilarious. And because we were just like, maybe if this had been something like the place, it would have been a big hassle. You'd have to restart, reload everything. But we just thought it's like speed chess now. Like, that's it. Everything's 5-second decision.
And the thing is, like, while we're doing it, so while we're putting stuff on air as well, like Mozza was like sort of starting to step back and working real football. So myself and Jebaru started like, all right, we want to ramp things up. So we wanted everyone's cameras to be of a certain quality, everyone's microphones to be a certain quality, internet connection. Like, again, we were checking people's internet speeds, like when we were speaking to them. Because Jebaru's background is TV production. So he was like essentially the show director. And he was in my ear constantly while I'm presenting the show with a panel of people that I've got as well. I had Lama, who was the right-hand guy. So whenever I passed off to him, I was then getting instructions from Jebaru in my ear. And he's like running everything and running the feeds. And he's like vision mixing the show live. So we were not doing what the showdown was doing, but we were trying our best to get up to that level as well. Because we thought the rising tide rises all ships. So it was great fun. It was great fun. And we always have talks about, should we bring it back and when should it come back? And
such an effort, though. It's like a full-time job.
Oh,
we're talking about like all of the production value, the scouting, for some reason I think it maybe just kind of ran its course because people ran out of energy. I don't know, like it kind of was at the point where it needed to go professional to some extent. They needed a couple of people to be able to actually do that as a living, and it just didn't. It was so close, it just didn't quite cross that mark.
Yeah, and I think that the FIFA E World Cup showed what could be done. Like, and I think that was the thing, going like, hey, if people throw money at this sort of stuff and they get like real big names in and they open it up to the world, wow, look what can be done. And at that point, as the playoffs, we're sat there going, we don't have that kind of money, so we probably can't do that.
Cheeky question: should SI fund that? Do you think they're missing a trick not investing in that? Just 1 or 2 people.
See, the thing is, like, we're obviously as content creators are accused of being paid off shills from Sports Interactive anyway. So imagine the community's distrust of whoever is the paid representative of Sports Interactive to go to the World Cup. No, I don't think so.
I'm thinking more of an organizer, somebody whose job is to have the technical skills to host these things. And I
think they should definitely organize it. They should certainly be on the organization of it. But I also think they should step away, because if they are too involved, then it's like, maybe it loses something as well. So I think if you get a production crew in, and the production crew that ran the FIFA E show, they work in esports. Like, they know how to make the show run. And I think leave it to them to run it, get SI to put the name on it and publicize it, and get the talent and sort of reach out and help. I mean, the fact that FIFA E was done with international FAs agreements,
incredible,
suggests that probably SI isn't really needed in that sense to push it on, but more just to put it in front of the people who play the game and make people who play the game aware of it. So I think, use SI as a PR. But other than that, leave it to the experts in that field per se.
Sounds good. Final question on this topic, I suppose. Do you think that Football Manager is fundamentally a funny game?
Define funny. Well, it can be. It can be. Like, I think it depends on what you play it for. Like, and I think the more I play it, particularly now as a content creator, I view the game, and I was always aware that everyone plays the game differently, but I think I'm more aware of just how differently everyone plays the game now. So I thought I was hardcore, that I won't use scouting. Like, I'm not using the search filters for searching by attributes. I play with attribute masking on. Some people, for me, go, oh God, I couldn't possibly do that. And I'm like, well, that's how I feel Football Manager should be played. I like to have an element of realism with it. I like to tell stories. But my word, second I start to tell people that I'm not bothered about certain elements of data or under 18s training, then all of a sudden I'm a console gamer, like to some people. So it's like, it can be funny. I tell you what is funny. The people that play it are funny. That's the thing. The people that play it are funny. People find levels of immersion within this game. They find the stories. They love what they do. It is, for some people, it is their world. It is their life. I think, had I had my time again, would I call my show Football Manager Ruin My Life? No. I would call it Football Manager is quite a significant part of my life, and sometimes it can have an effect both positively and negatively. But it's not quite a snappy title, so I think it sort of worked. No. It sort of worked as it is. But yeah, like having met some people now who are way more into the game than I am, then yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think I sort of like, I can't say it's ruined my life really, because it's given me a lot of opportunities, a lot of chance to meet people and do some cool things and try and give something back and help build. The stories are funny. Seeing random new gens pop up and with weird names, or 5'3" goalkeepers that I've seen at the minute is funny. Seeing, as I say, defenders score 1 goal from halfway line is funny. Seeing me get sacked, when shirts turn up that I bought the day that they get delivered, then getting sacked on stream, that's funny. There's humour within it, and I think it's down to us to find it.
Beautiful. And if people want to watch you do that, where do they go, and what are you currently up to?
You can see me try and navigate my way around Darlington at the minute on twitch.tv/Tony Jameson FM. It's Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and I tell you what, Saturdays are getting quite fun as well at the minute. So we're doing Saturdays. Numbers are pretty good on Saturdays. And yeah, it's just a good save at the minute. We don't know if it's going to be a 1 club save. Because I don't know how long I'm going to be at the club before they sack me. But we are having a lot of fun, and we are getting players. Their players are in the chat at the minute, and the head of youth development was in the other day, and apparently the stream's been shown to the team. And the goalkeepers are not happy with me because I was less than complimentary about them and their ability.
I love that.
So come and see me before I'm not allowed in Darlington ever again.
You go forget that they're real people sometimes.
I know. This is the thing. So as soon as we can get through like season 9 or something when they're all new gens, then I'm not upsetting anybody. But
you can really lay into them then.
Just as a spoiler alert, FM Con probably not being held in Darlington. Probably not.
Okay, good to know. Strike that off the list.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to hear your thoughts, and great to have you on. I really thank you for your time. Thanks for coming.
No, mate, it's been brilliant. Really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
And thanks to TJ, Tony Jameson FM, what a guy, and worth breaking the podcast length record, I think, as a one-off. We're reeling it back in. We'll be reeling it back in. Don't you worry. I keep promising that. I don't know if it's going to happen. If you are new here, you've made it this far, thank you so much. I really appreciate the support for the podcast. And as I alluded to earlier in the podcast, this is kind of a bit of an evergreen podcast. So if there's any topics you see or creators you see that I've previously spoken to and that sounds like something you want to put on for half an hour or so, I would really encourage you to do that. It would mean a lot. And if you enjoyed this episode, give it a like, give it a share, give it a rating on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And until next time, I will see you when I see you. Go well, my friends.